All right, here we go. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you joining. We're going to give a couple of seconds so that people can populate our Zoom room. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is day 4 of the Virtual Training Institute, and we are so excited to see 57 of you populating our Zoom room this morning. So if you don't mind, go ahead and open your chat box, and we would love to know where you're from. We've had such an exciting week with people joining us from Maryland and Virginia and West Virginia. Oh, we have a West Virginia person with us this morning, and Virginia and New Jersey. It's just so fantastic to see how many of you are joining us from places other than Maryland. So welcome to all of our out-of-staters. So today I am so excited to present Ramona Kunkel for you. She is one of my esteemed colleagues at the Maryland Department of Labor, and she's going to be presenting adapting low literacy reading strategies using free online resources. Definitely something that we're all very interested in during this time. So as you're getting started this morning, I'm going to launch a poll for us. And the poll simply asks, what is your role within your program? This will give Ramona and I a better idea of who we have in our audience today. All right, Ramona, probably as we would maybe expect, we are primarily ABE instructors, and then we are probably equally split with ESL instructors and instructional specialists. So with that, I am going to pass this over to you and give you the floor.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. I appreciate that warm introduction. So thank you everyone for participating in this webinar. I'm Ramona Kunkel. I'm with the Maryland Department of Labor. I'm a adult education program specialist. So just a little bit of background about me. I actually started teaching back in the late 1980s. So I guess that shows a little bit about my age. And I have primarily worked with low literacy learners. So it's really my passion. I worked for over 20 years in a program that specialized in learners with special needs. So that's really where my heart is at. So, even though I no longer teach in the programs, I'm always looking for different strategies or different resources that can help teachers that teach specifically that population. So I'm going to do a little bit of a brief overview, talk a little bit about preparation, briefly about engagement, but specifically this webinar is going to focus on core reading, the program ReadWorks, and then talk about putting it all together. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some questions and answers. So this is just a little bit of my philosophy. So I personally believe that when you teach low-level learners, that it actually requires a higher level of teaching skill set. Unfortunately, I have heard some teachers or even some administrators say, well, anybody can teach ABE1 or anybody can teach, addition, subtraction of math. And I would actually disagree with that and say that it actually that not everybody can teach that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it does take a special skill set to teach those low-level learners. Teaching low-level learners, one of the things that I really enjoyed about it was that you can be a little bit more creative. You sometimes have students that are still very much, GED test focused, and that's okay. But you can be creative and sort of mix it up and do things that you might not do necessarily if you were teaching a GED class. However, it also can be a little bit more challenging to find instructional materials that are appropriate for that level and for that age. I know when I taught, a lot of materials, if it was for that level, they were really more geared towards kids. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this presentation, because the program that I'm going to show you is, in my opinion, great for adult learners. So I just want to talk real quickly about preparation, and I try to include this in my presentations because I think it's so important. So when we think about preparation, I think a lot of times we just automatically go to, okay, I have to create this great lesson plan, which of course we should be doing. But we also want to think a little bit broader. So especially now that we're doing so much online, think about, what's online skills your students need. Even younger students struggle. So, there's a big difference between doing something on your computer and doing something on your phone. We used to say that if our younger GED students, could take their GED test like this, they'd probably do okay. But transferring that sometimes to the keyboard doesn't, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And I included this next part just because I think it's so important, especially now, is that also, how will you mentally prepare for each class? So that, again, just thinking a little bit more holistically, just taking care of yourself, your diet, getting exercise, maintaining social relationships, which is so important, especially now, and then even doing something like meditation. And I just like to include these three because I know that they tend to be well used and highly respected: Insight Timer, Headspace, and Calm. So those are just some things to think about as you prepare for your instruction. So I'm going to talk real briefly about engagement. There actually have been several presentations done during the Virtual Training Institute that specifically focus on engagement. So I would highly encourage you to check those out if you have the opportunity when they become available. But I just want to talk about this just for a minute, just because this is online. So I came across a World Tech Ed webinar that they did, and it was presented, one of the presenters was Mockingbird Education. And she talked about the law of limited attention. And I included the link here. And if you go to the 43-minute mark, that's where she talks about this law of limited attention. And in there, she says that research shows that our attention is pretty much good for our age up to 20 minutes. So if you're 40 years old, your attention span is not 40 minutes. It taps out at around between 20 and 25 minutes. However, with online learning, it's only 2 to 3 minutes. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this, and just, constantly have to work just a little bit harder to keep your students engaged. So including taking frequent breaks, which I'm sure most of us are doing by now, even getting them just to stand up and stretch, even starting with a short meditation. Rachel Riggs does a great presentation where she talks about her Hansers. So if you ever get a chance to check her out, please do. But also even just, writing the letters A, B, C, D on 4 pieces of paper and having them hold it up in front of them, for multiple choice, something to get them moving, to get them active. Same thing even with math problems. You could have them write the numbers 1 through, 0 through 9 on a piece of paper, and then they hold it up for their answers. And then of course, breakout rooms is a great way to keep your students engaged. So I'm going to talk about core reading. So before I start, I'd like to know, just put in the chat box, if anybody who uses core reading already. Oh, good. Okay, I'm seeing some yeses. Okay, use a lot. That's great. Okay, some have, some haven't. All right, so that's great. So let me get started. Oh, but no, okay. All right, and I believe that sometimes they call it like read alouds, I think maybe in ESL, but so I'm just going to go through this. So here is some basic information about core reading, and I got this from a website called Reading Rockets. So the whole point is to have everybody in your class reading in unison. And the beauty of this is, so let me preface this with, when I worked in a program where we were primarily special needs, we used this a lot. And I could really see a difference in the students' confidence and their fluency, which is the point of what core reading is supposed to do. So what happens is that because everybody's reading together with the instructor leading it, students that might feel really self-conscious about reading out loud or nervous, they feel like they have some support. And to be totally honest, when I was in grade school, I hated reading out loud. I was very, very self-conscious. I talked very, very quietly because I didn't want anybody to hear me make a mistake. And so I think that happens a lot with our learners, is that they're very self-conscious. So this is a way to ease them and to make them feel, just build up their confidence in themselves. So it can provide less skilled readers the opportunity to practice, and then they get support. It's also a way for fluency to be modeled for students who don't read very fluently. And it also improves their ability to read sight words. Okay, so how do we use core reading? So you want to choose a book or passage that works well for reading aloud as a group. So you want something that is patterned or predictable. So something that may be like a poem that has repetitious lines sometimes work, or if it's a subject that you've already covered, and so they may have some background knowledge about it. Yes, it also provides great listening practice, absolutely. You want to pick something that's not too long, keep it relatively short, especially if you're just doing this for the first time with your learners. There's a little bit of a learning curve. And you also want to do something that is at the independent reading level for most students. So you don't want to make it something too challenging right off the bat. So I took this right from that ReadWorks website. So this was, pre-COVID, where they talked about using an overhead projector or placing students at a computer. But you could even, share your screen and have students do that. Or you can even assign this, and through ReadWorks, where I'm going to show you how you can put this all together. So you want to read the story or the passage aloud to model the fluency for students. So you're going to read it out loud yourself. And that's so that you can kind of set the pace so that they know what to expect. So they already have heard it. They already know what it should sound like. And so that there's some predictability. Now, I know that there's some controversy with the second one, but I'm going to tell you, in the program where I worked, we had students read using their finger or a pen or a pencil. You want to get them off of that at some point, but it is perfectly okay if they do that. There are some students who have tracking issues, which means they get to the end of the line and they have a hard time with their eye then moving down to the next line. So you know how we sometimes repeat the same line? Some students will just do that over and over again because they have tracking issues. Also, if you're in a face-to-face class, I'll tell you where this really helps, is that you can then see if they have gotten off of where you are in the passage, and you can kind of help guide them back. Yes, eventually you want them to, get away from that, but it's perfectly okay if they do that, especially for a new strategy, a new technique that they're not familiar with. And then then everybody's going to reread the passage all together, aloud, in unison. So I've included a YouTube link. I'm not going to show it. It's pretty short. It's about 5 minutes. It is with kids. I had a really hard time finding choral reading with adults, but this will serve the purpose. It's just an example so that you can see what choral reading should look like. So interestingly, as I was doing some research for this, I found out that there are actually 10 types of choral reading, believe it or not. So I'm just going to go through this briefly. And at the bottom, you'll see that I have a link to a YouTube video. And I got all this information from this YouTube video. So she goes through it. It's about 30 minutes, and she goes through each one of these, and she has nice little diagrams so that you can see exactly what it looks like. So the first one is unison. Everybody's all together. Then there's something called chime in, where one student reads and others chime in for emphasis or for repetition. So this works well if you have like a poem and you have a repetitive line. And so this is where you might want to actually take that text, and you might want to bold where everybody is going to join in, just so that they know. Then there's something called build up, where one student starts with the first sentence, then one by one, another student joins in. You have to coordinate this. You have to make sure that everybody's sort of on the same page, so to speak. Yes, it works with song refrains, exactly. So that, yeah, everybody just joins in. Then you have solo, where you have one student read specific lines on their own, and you alternate with a solo reader. There's callback or call and response. You divide the class into 2 groups. One group reads the first sentence, another group reads the next sentence, and you alternate back and forth. So this is where, if you take a passage and you number the sentences, this group knows, okay, we're going to do the odd number. This group knows we're going to do the even number. It just helps with keeping it straight. Then we have concurrent. One group reads one line as if they're chanting. That's a little harder. That's a little bit more confusing. Solo together, and that works well also for reading a poem. So some lines are read solo, and then everybody comes together for other lines. So for example, lines 1 through 4 are read by 4 different learners, and then lines 5 and 6 are read together. This is really just a way to mix it up. Most instructors use the unison, but I'm just showing you these just to let you know that there are different ways of doing this. Then there's random. It's not quite as bad as it sounds. So several students are assigned specific lines. So the group of students aren't the same from one line to the next. But it's not just sort of like a free-for-all. And then you have echo, where you have one student reads a line, the rest of the class echoes back. And then you alternate the solo reader. And then there's reverse echo, where the group starts the reading and then one learner or teacher echoes back the sentence. So again, I put the YouTube link there. So if you want to, she does a really good job of explaining it again. And it's just a way to do something a little bit more creative. I would highly recommend that you get down the unison choral reading before you try one of these other methods, just because they do take more coordination and they can be a little bit more complicated. Okay, so getting started, you want to make sure that you slow down your pace, but don't make it too slow. You don't want it to be so slow that it's unnatural. The class is going to need time to adjust. It rarely works perfectly right out of the gate, because everybody it's something that most students have never done before. And so they just need to sort of figure out what that sounds like. So you're going to need a couple times to synchronize the pace. Pay attention to learners who read very loudly or fast. Sometimes you get those students that, want to, make sure that everybody knows that they're participating, and that's great, but sometimes it can be a little overpowering. So if you're modeling dialogues, when you're modeling it, you want to sort of turn yourself so that they know this person is speaking, now this person is speaking, just, because that's another way to do this, is you could have a dialogue between two people, and, this group will be this person and this group will be the other person. So I am going to ask for Ellen's help here for a minute. So we have a short passage, What is a Quilt? And I'm going to ask for about 4 or 5 volunteers, and we are actually going to do some choral reading. So if you could raise your hand, that would be great. And then Ellen can give you the permission to talk.
Okay, so I see Peg and I see Jennifer.
Maybe just one more brave soul.
Ooh, we've got lots of brave souls. How many do you want, Ramona?
I'll take as many as you got.
Okay.
That's great. I appreciate the willingness to participate. So
I can't even count how many. I think we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7.
Oh, that's great. Wonderful. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so what I did is I took this passage and I intentionally reworked this, and I went through and I just numbered the sentences. And so this is something that you might want to do at the beginning, just to sort of help students out a little bit. So what you would want to do as the instructor, and you can do this just like we're doing this now, that's why we're doing this, is you would want to read this yourself. So just to sort of set the pace. So I'm only going to do like the first 3 sentences. Quilts can be used in many ways. Some people use quilts as blankets to sleep under. Some people make quilts to give as presents. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask those who have agreed to participate to do this with me. So what usually happens is the instructor starts and there's like this tiny little bit of lag time, but that's okay. So we're gonna try this out and see what happens. We're just gonna work with the first 6 sentences and that'll be good enough for us. Okay, ready? Quilts
can
be used
in many
many
ways.
ways. Some
Some
people
people
use
use
quilts as
as
blankets to sleep
to sleep
under.
under.
Some
Some people
make
make
quilts
quilts to give.
as presents. Some
Some people use quilts on the floor
on their
and walls.
floors
and walls.
some
Some
People
tell
tell
stories
stories
with
with
quilts.
quilts.
And
And
some people
people wear quilts or
or
clothes.
clothes.
Good job. Thank you. I really appreciate the willingness to participate. So sometimes you also have to kind of gauge your pace to the class. So sometimes you realize that, oh, okay, maybe I'm going a little too fast. I need to slow it down. And it's just a work in progress. So again, the first couple of times it's going to be a little sketchy. And what you might even want to do is do it once and then say, okay, well, let's just try that again and see how that goes. Because once they've done it a first time, okay, now they get the feel of it and they understand how it's supposed to work. So you might want to do that again. And you might even want to have one that kind of is your warm up for a couple of them, just to get them used to it. But it over time, it does get better. Like I said, it's a little, there's a learning curve for it. It's a little difficult at the beginning, but it does get better. So again, thank you for those who participated. So now I'm going to talk a bit about Reworks. So full disclosure, I have never used this as a teacher, but when I came across this resource, I said, oh my gosh, I would have loved if this was a resource when I was a teacher. So I've done a fair amount of playing around in it, but I want you to know I've never used this as an instructor. So I want to know if anybody here is using ReadWorks now. Yes, because I know that some of our programs are, some are. Yes, it is fantastic. Yes, it is. I think it is fantastic. Okay, good. Yes, in the past, not yet. Okay, so got a little bit of all over, some yes, some, every once in a while, some yes. Wonderful. I use it all the time. I'll tell you, if I was teaching, I would use it all the time also. I'm right there with you, Cynthia. Okay, so I'm going to get into this. And this comes right from their website. It's a direct quote. So they are nonprofit, and I love them because I watched a couple of their webinars, and they are they really want to get it out there that they are a free website, that they are a free organization. And this is almost a direct quote. We are a free program and we will always be free. So they are driven by grants and by contributions. So that's to me the real beauty of this, and it's so professionally done. Although they're really, I'll say, designed for K-12, this so much lends itself to adult education. So don't let that stop you. They have the largest, highest quality library of curated nonfiction and literally literary, oh my gosh, articles in the country. They also, and their whole focus is on reading comprehension, having vocabulary supports, text dependent question sets. They have wonderful teacher guidance. And the best part is that it is backed by science. So if you don't use it, I would highly recommend you check it out. Okay, so like I said, it's K through 12, but it's absolutely appropriate for adult education. Based on the number of people that programs that already use it, I think that's obvious. It's web-based. It's based on cognitive science research. You have the ability to assign readings, differentiation, which I think is, really just invaluable. I taught many multi-level classes, and we all know, even if you have leveled classes, there is no such thing as a perfect leveled class. It doesn't exist. Even if you have everybody in there who got the same score on the CASAS or the TABE, there's still going to be differentiation. So you can search by grade, by topic, subtopic, keyword, just all sorts of ways to search and to get what you're looking for. So they have something called the pillars of reading comprehension. So their focus again is to build background knowledge, to grow vocabulary, to increase reading quantity, develop reading comprehension. And I'll show you the page where that is. And within each one of those four topics, they have what the research says, they tell you how to do it, and they tell you how to differentiate. And there's the link right at the bottom, so it'll take you right to that page so that you can check it out yourself.
Hi, Christina.
I'm fine.
I think some people may be unmuted. Thank you. Okay, great. So they have something called, so the content, just want to go through this real briefly. They have an article a day, which is a great way, I would think, to sort of do a warm up. They have lots of reading passages, thousands of them. They have ebooks that have a human voice audio. They have steps so that you can provide an article, but then they also have something that's a little bit less complex. And then a step 2, which is even less complex than that. And then also a student library. And I'm going to show you this in a minute. So the article a day is meant to build background knowledge, vocabulary, reading stamina, and just, you can do it every day. That's why it's called article a day. They have boost articles, which are slightly lower level. They have challenge articles, which are slightly higher level. So you can have students in your class that are on slightly different levels reading the same article. They have collections for English language learners. And so they have text that's relevant to that population. They also have instructions that are available in 6 other languages. The text itself is not available in other languages because their focus is on learning English, but they do provide that extra support for instructions just to help ELL get through understanding the instructions. And then they have paired text, which I think is fabulous. They have multiple texts on a related topic. So if you're teaching a topic, but you want them to have a variety of articles within that same topic, it puts it all together for you. Okay, so let's see. All right, so just real quick for the article a day assignment, it has an audio component. So if the student is really struggling, they can be shared via Zoom. Yes, because at least I'm gonna be able to do it. Show you Reworks using Zoom. They have a student toolbar which for different needs. So you can change the size of the text. You can number the paragraphs. You can have guided reading strips. So just like I said, if students have trouble with tracking, they have a guided strip to help them keep on the correct line. And then you can do split screens. There's something called Book of Knowledge that also has questions. And so when they're writing their, the article of day does not have assessments, but they have a Book of Knowledge where it will give them a writing activity and sentence starters, but then they can also have the passage on a split screen if they need to go back and refer back to the article. And you can reassign you can reassign this. Okay, if you want them to. So I am going to show you what this looks like. I think this is the right one. Oh, yeah, oh, here it is. So can you see the ReadWorks? I want to make sure I did this correctly. Oh, wait, I don't think I did this right. There we go. That should work. Okay, so I'm going to collapse my share chat screen for a minute. So here we have, so like I said, you can click on reading passages and it will give you all the reading passages. And then you can, they're so helpful. They really are. They tell you exactly what each of these then subtopics mean. Here you have the steps. If you want something that's going to have step reads, you can also click if you want it to have the human audio versus poly. You can you can then sort by the grade level, what kind of activity type you want. Do you want them to have the full questions? It's usually 10. Express question set is just 5. Open-ended, it's just a way for you to just be specific about what you want them to be able to do. And then we have the article a day. So it just gives, again, you can sort by the grade level. And what's nice is, let's just say you really want to do something on penguins. So you put in penguins and it will give you articles that are, that are related to penguins. So again, it's just sort of a nice way to assign material that it would be of interest to your learners. I know that when I taught, our learners just loved anything that had to do with animals. Like they just couldn't get enough. So it's a nice way to find things will be of interest to them. So I'm going to also show you this real quick. So this is just an example. So here's oranges from tree to you. I'm not going to play this, but up here is the audio. So you can play this and it will read along this passage. You'll see here where it has step read 1. So it will give you a slightly less complex article. And then you can see it also has the question sets, a full question set of 10 questions versus express if you just only want to give them 5. And then there is also the read step 2, which gives you an even less complex article. Here's what I really also like about this, and I want to point out, is that if there's words that might be confusing, because this is talking about a packing plant. So they might confuse it with a plant, a green thing. So you can click on that. You can click on here. It'll read it for them. It'll give them the definition, the grammar usage, puts it in a word, and then it will even give them a translation in Spanish and in Chinese. So just want to show you that real quick. So let me go back. So let me check my chat. Yes, yeah, you can hide the gray level. Okay. So in the student library, they have thousands of nonfiction texts, and I think this is why it works so well, is that it's science and social studies. So it's not like a story that's geared towards, kids and, what would happen in a child's life. Although there's nothing wrong with reading those stories, nonfiction tends to work. I found that it tends to work a little bit better. So the library is set up that has no assessments. And this is just reading for fun. So you can go into the library and you can assign your student a library, a passage, and then they have the opportunity to click on if they liked it, if they didn't like it, if they want more like that, so that you as an instructor know, oh, okay, they really like that. So I can assign more, because you want to encourage just reading for the sheer fun of it, not, oh, okay, I'm reading because this is part of the assignment and this is what my instructor is asking me to do, or I have to read to pass my GED test. It does give them a one writing prompt just for them to think about what they learned in that passage. There are picture books. And what I like about this is this would be really good for project-based learning. You could assign different, you could go in and pick out different articles that might be appropriate so that they could actually do a project-based learning. And it also has an audio function. So we're gonna look at that real quick. Make sure I'm getting to the right one. All right, so I created a class. I just called it grade 2 just for the fun of it. But again, just here's a real quick preview. So here's, I don't have anything in the reading list or the reading log, but it's just a way for you to, so here we have library settings. And again, if there's something that okay, I know that this particular student really likes, sports and hobbies. So it will give you different articles that have to do with sports and hobbies. And again, this is just really meant for just reading for the sheer pleasure of reading. Because ultimately that's really where we would like our students to get, is just enjoy it, just, have fun with it. Okay, so here is a list of resources that are really helpful. They do some great webinars, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you that real quick. I think that is my reading glasses. I think this is it. Well, I can get there this way. Okay, so here's where they have, this is where they have that pillars of reading comprehension. And, if you want, build background knowledge, they tell you what the research says, how to do it, article a day, and then the differentiation. They have, the pair texts. They just really do, I think, a phenomenal job of giving you lots of good information. They have, now I'm having a hard time finding oh, here it is, webinars. Okay. They have some phenomenal webinars. Hybrid and remote learning, article a day, supporting your learners. So they have webinars that will literally hold your hand and walk you through the entire process. Are students able to go to the library and choose reading themselves? I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure. I believe maybe somebody could answer that for me. From what I could tell, it looks like the teacher needs to assign them, but the student can let you know like what topics they're interested in, and that will help guide you to picking the articles that you want for them. I'm sorry, I don't really know the answer to that question. So real quick, putting it all together. So what is a quilt? I got that from ReadWorks. So it's real small, but on that slide, I have the link that goes to that article. So it lends itself because you can assign the same article to all your learners, and then they can all bring it up on their screen at the same time. And it allows you to give, possibly more challenging text if you want to, as you get used to core reading, and they become more familiar with it. When you do the core reading, that means that the student has already heard the text and then they understand the purpose and the meaning of the article. So you might want to do core reading for that text in ReadWorks and then have them do that as a homework assignment on their own so that they then work on it later or independently, and they then have to read it. But it is nice that they do have, though, that audio feature, because then the student can actually do like sort of independent additional core reading. They can actually do core reading with the, I'll say that the narrator as the instructor, and then they are practicing that themselves so they can also develop additional practice in fluency. So that is all I have. I have about 12 minutes. So if there's any additional questions that I might be able to answer, I would be more than happy to take questions. You're welcome. Yes, like I said, I wish Reworks had been around when I was a teacher. I would have, oh my gosh, I think I would have ate, breathed, lived ReadWorks. So I just want to thank everybody here for your participation. Thanks for those who agreed to help me out with the core reading. I appreciate that. And here is my information. So if you ever want to just reach out, I always love talking about curriculum, especially for special populations and for lower level learners. It's where my heart is. It's where my passion is. So I see
Ramona, thank you so much. I think it's
Sure.
impossible to watch one of Ramona's presentations without learning something super valuable for the classroom implementation. That's what I really, truly love about your presentations, Ramona. So I
Thank you.
posted, so just in case we're getting any more questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. But I did post 2 links in the chat box. The first is to the feedback summary, but you will also be prompted to complete that when you leave the presentation today. The other link is the proof of participation form. So since today is the last day, please go ahead and fill out your proof of participation form if you would like proof of participation from our office. We just ask that you complete one after you've watched all of the presentations that you're going to watch for the Virtual Training Institute. With that said, we do have a full morning of presentations, and we certainly hope to see you in a future session. Well, Ramona, I think the chat box makes it super clear that your presentation was very valuable to the participants today. So
Well, you're welcome.
so much.
I'm always happy to share resources, and because I know how difficult it can be. So thank you, Ellen. I appreciate your help. And thank you everybody for participating.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here.